Good day, everyone. I am Trisha F. Ellorimo, together with Abigail A. Celeste. Our assigned topic is all about discerning moral dilemma, which is in Lesson 3 of Module 1. Here are specific learning outcomes. During the learning engagement, we will be able to first, explain the nature of moral dilemma, second, analyze the components of moral dilemma, and lastly, relate the concept of moral dilemma in real situation. So, before we proceed to the discussion, let's understand first the meaning of each word that we intend to learn, or rather, the purpose of our topic. So, here are the word definitions from Oxford Languages. Discerning is means having or showing good judgment. Moral is concerned with the principles of right and wrong behavior and the goodness or badness of human character. Dilemma is a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives, especially equally undesirable ones, or rather an argument forcing an opponent to choose either of two unfavorable alternatives. So therefore, we aim to understand how can we give or rather show a good judgment among situations either for goodness or bad that concerned with a difficult circumstances or arguments. So in philosophy, ethical dilemmas, also called ethical paradoxes or moral dilemmas, are situations in which an agent stands under two conflicting moral requirements, none of which overrides the other. So a closely related definition characterizes ethical dilemmas as situations in which every available choice is wrong. The term is also used in a wider sense in everyday language to refer to ethical conflicts that may be resolvable, to psychologically difficult choices, or to other types of difficult ethical problems. So, reasoning about moral dilemmas in which one person's needs or desires conflict with those of others in a context in which the role of prohibitions, authorities, dictates, and formal obligations is minimal. A moral dilemma exists when available choices and obligations do not allow for moral outcomes. In such instances, a choice or an action is anticipated or required, and all of the available alternatives violate some moral obligation. So, moral dilemmas are not uncommon when organizations and individuals are working to satisfy competing interests, or when personal morals and professional obligations are directly opposed. As students, we are obliged to follow rules and regulations of the school. One of the rules of the school is not to cheat during examinations. Perhaps we are torn between cheating and not cheating. If we cheat, there is a chance of getting caught and failed. If we do not cheat, there is a possibility of failing due to lack of study. In either case, we are likely to fail. This mess is called a dilemma, a situation that challenges an agreeable solution, conflicting situation. So here is an example of a scenario, the unfaithful friend. You go out with your husband for dinner at a new restaurant you have not frequented before. It is in a part of town you rarely visit. You are shocked. From the way they are behaving, it isn't obvious they are more to see your friend's spouse having dinner with a very young, attractive person than friends. The couple finish their meal and leave without seeing you. They have behaved very affectionately on the way out the door. What will you do? A. Tell your friend knowing you probably will not be believed and that it may ruin your friendship. Or B. Say nothing about seeing the couple as it is none of your business. They may even have an open relationship. Here is another example. Reward a job well done. You understand the importance of teamwork in your job. You share ideas and responsibilities with your team members on a daily basis. In your weekly team meeting with your supervisor, one of your coworkers takes credit for a time and money saving change in operating procedures you devised. Your supervisor erroneously thinks your coworker came up with a change and your coworker does not correct the misinterpretation, but allows the boss to not only commend him but offer a bonus. So what will you do? A. Do you go to your coworker and demand he correct the situation? B. Go to your supervisor and explain you should receive the commendation and reward? Or rather, C. Keep quiet as you do not believe in ownership of ideas. Here is another example of a dilemma. Introduction. I have a dilemma. Should I confess to my father and all of Ravla that I married Molly to escape my brother's blackmail? Or do I keep paying them off to keep quiet? Or option 1 is, if I keep paying them off, I can continue to see Nancy and no one will know except when she talks about marriage or I run out of money. Option 2 is, or I can tell everyone, which means I will lose Nancy and possibly be disowned by my father. So if you are on his shoe, what option would you choose? So what to do in a moral dilemma? When faced with a moral dilemma, there are many factors to consider. First, who is involved and why? Second, is action necessary, and if so, what do you do? Third, perhaps it's better to tell someone else about the dilemma and let them decide what to do. Or maybe there are other solutions that are not plain to see at first. So, how to handle a moral dilemma? First, use logic instead of emotion. Using logic forces a person to consider as many perspectives as possible to find the best possible solution. Thinking logically can also help a person calm down and relax instead of being too emotionally charged to make a reasonable decision. While this may seem difficult to do, it's often the best way to handle a situation without being too biased one way or another, depending on the circumstances. Understandably, there will be a situation in which this is not possible due to the nature of the dilemma. In this case, it might be best to wait a decision until emotions aren't so volatile. Second, weigh the pros and cons of each decision. In this case, logic dictates that the fewest number of cons is likely the most reasonable decision. No matter what, working through a pros and cons list might bring to light a factor that can influence in a decision. This wouldn't be an easy decision for most people, but weighing pros and cons may help. For instance, let's say a person works at a retail store with their best friend. They witness their best friend steal some money from the store safe. They confront their friend to convince them to put the money back, but they refuse. So now, do they report their lifelong best friend to management, or do they keep quiet about it and assume the store can afford the loss? Logically, if they don't report their friend, that friend may keep doing it, which might affect the store's ability to stay in business, thereby affecting other people's income. However, if they do report their friend, it will most likely cause them to lose their best friend forever.
Discussion of the scenarios presented. The person involved to act in the following scenarios are faced to process the following questions. First, does the situation involve a moral dilemma? If the dilemma affects the well-being of a person, then certainly it is a moral dilemma. Moral dilemma, a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two courses of action, either of which entails go beyond a moral principle. There are three scenarios presented involving well-beings of a person. The first scenario depicts a driver of a train concerned with 5 bystanders and a person sleeping on the rail track. This dilemma belongs to personal moral dilemma. In this moral dilemma, no matter what choice you made, in these situations, you always end up compromising some moral value. The second scenario presents a CEO and board members considering whether to lay off some of the employees or not. They are experiencing organizational moral dilemma where the situation involved members of a company. A dilemma that involves members of a company, cooperative, and association is of this kind. Lastly, the third scenario shows the situation in which the lawmakers, SSS, executives, and our former president tackled the issue on pensions. This last scenario belongs to structural moral dilemma for the persons involved hold high-level position in the society. Second step, we have what is the level of involvement of the person caught in the situation. The driver of the train depicted in the first scenario was truly involved in the situation and he has to do something. The CEO and the board members, lawmakers, SSS executives, and the former president are also involved in the situation. The persons involved in a dilemma is called moral agent, a being who is capable of acting with reference to right or wrong. Therefore, man is a moral agent. A moral agent is a person who has the ability to discern right from wrong and to be held accountable for his or her own actions. Third step, we have who are the people that may be affected by the implications of the moral situations or by our concrete choice of action. They are the stakeholders that are broadly defined as anyone who is impacted by a decision maker's decision. Identifying these stakeholders forces us to give considerations to people aside from ourselves. The psychological tendency of most of us when confronted with an ethical choice is to simply think of ourselves, of what we need, or of what we want. Fourth step, what is the ethical issue at hand? After establishing the facts and identifying the stakeholders and their concerns in the matter, we must determine whether the action is morally right or wrong. We need moral principles as basis of our reasoning and to justify actions committed in dealing with dilemma. These moral principles will be tackled within the succeeding lessons. We need to know whether it's wrong or not to let the train run over one instead of five when the choices are boiled down into two. Is it right to lay off employees if the company experiences financial setbacks? Is it all right to raise the pension if the institution will go bankrupt in the long run? The final step is for the individual to make her ethical conclusion or decision. Real ethical decisions are often very difficult enough to make and for action and for so many different reasons. Not all the facts in a given case may be available to the agent for consideration. Some facts may be eventually turned out to be misleading or not true at all. And so the agent's vigilance and meticulousness in establishing the facts will always be tested in a given ethical situation.
And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening and God bless.